Well, hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Emerge Young Adult Ministry Secure the Bag event. We are so thankful for your attendance. Please, please, please pray with me as we get ready to get into this session. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this awesome time that you have given us. We thank you for this moment that you have allowed us to be here. God, we really pray that you would allow our speaker to speak into the hearts. I know it's financial, but we know that it's still spiritual business. We're thankful for allowing this man to come to us and impart wisdom and knowledge. We pray that even those that might ask questions, that their answers would be answered. Their questions will be answered. God, we thank you again for this amazing opportunity. Thank you for our pastor for allowing us to do this. And we pray that we are able to live productive lives as a result of this session. God, we thank you, we love you, and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome to the Emerge Young Adult Ministry Secure the Bag event. We are so excited that so many of you have joined us, whether you're on Facebook or whether you're on YouTube. We are thankful for you. Our young adult team put this event together, and we are so thankful for them. All of those working on social media, all of those that put this event as it relates to the logistics together. And obviously, we are thankful for our featured guest, Mr. Matt Aaron. Before we get started, please follow us. Might as well go ahead and share this. This is going to be some dope information that my brother is going to share with us. But definitely follow our young adult Facebook page and our Instagram account. Those are going to be on the bottom of our screen for you to just go ahead and like and share all the things that we have and to see what else we have coming up every week. We have a prayer call that people on our young adult team actually have a devotional giving somewhat of a nugget of a word so that those that are able to join us each week are able to get a little bit of a word to get them through the week. But definitely join us on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. The number, as you can see, is right there. This month, we're going to be talking about Watch Your Mouth. It's definitely a time of us praying for God to reveal how our speech can either help or hurt. And something that we want to pray about, and we want to share devotionals about this coming month, the month of March. So definitely join us there. But today we're here for Secure the Bag event that we are very passionate about. We know that there is a lot going on in our world, and it's definitely best for you to be financially stable and astute in all of your financial practices. And so we wanted to invest in that on tonight. And my brother, Matt Aaron, who has been with us before, no stranger to the Metropolitan Young Adult family or the Metropolitan Church. And we're so thankful for him coming back. Just to give a short introduction, and we're going to bring him right on. Please note, get your questions together. We have a segment right after he presents where you can ask questions, and we're going to be answering those questions live. So please, if you have questions, please do not forget to ask those at the end, or definitely stay to the end of this broadcast. And after his presentation, he's going to be answering questions live. I'm going to come back and we are going to do that together. So definitely keep your questions in your mind on a paper and put them in the chat so that we are able to then put them on the screen, and then Mr. Matt Aaron can actually answer those questions. Just a little short introduction from my brother. Matt is a certified financial planner, professional and founder of Lux Wealth Planning. He provides comprehensive financial planning to a diverse set of clients, including a number of services not limited to cash flow and debt management and insurance, investment, and tax planning. Matt holds a BBA from Howard University and has earned both a certificate in financial planning from Georgetown University and the prestigious CFP designation. He is a talented brother. I love him. He actually plays golf, so we definitely connect on that. But he's a down-to-earth brother, and he's married to my seminary sister. So I'm thankful for the connections we've made and the information he's about to share. So why don't we go right on ahead and bring him on up? Matt, are you ready?
I am ready.
Awesome, awesome. All right, man. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Love it, love it. Well, I'm so excited to be spending time with you all and being able to share some wisdom. The gift that God has given me is being able to, I think communicate and convey how do we have a better relationship with our money and grow deeper with our purpose. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit of the softer side of money, and then we'll also talk a little bit about the technical side of money. And we're going to talk about this in really three different parts. Part one is how to make the right decision when buying a home, right? Buying a home is one of the most critical decisions that we make in our lives. Part two is going to be the number one money rule. So I'm going to share a secret around what is that number one money rule. So make sure you stay for that. And then last but not least, part three, I'm going to share 5 ideas to live a more fulfilling life. And I believe when you couple buying the right house, understanding this number one rule, and then number three, understanding how to live a fulfilled life, you will ultimately grow in your happiness and be able to live within your purpose. All right. So make sure you are taking notes because I think that the information that we share today, or I believe the information that we share today, if you take it to heart and you implement it, you will live a more fulfilled and happy life. So let's jump right into part one, how to make the right decision when buying a house. Well, it's first understanding, right? Your house is not your most important asset. And we've been conditioned to believe that when you buy a house, this is going to be your most important asset. But if you do a really good job at managing your money, you're going to have assets that surround your house, right? Your house can be a foundation, but it's not your most important asset, right? Because you could buy a house and then ultimately be house poor, right? So when you buy that house, you got to make sure that you're having the end in mind. You got to make sure that you're buying the right house for you. So there are two angles I want to take here. The first is there are two, and that's the financial angle, and then the non-financial angle. So let's start with the non-financial angle of this decision making process, and I'm going to call it the 3 C's. The first C is community and culture, right? Where are you living? Is it near family? Is it near friends? Is it a place that energizes you? I do believe that energy is everything. So if you go home and you're in a community that doesn't really give you energy, then you might be putting yourself in a position that creates bad spending habits. Maybe you take more trips than you need to because you're trying to go leave your home, right? So I think it's important to understand that the people around you can enrich your life or they can suck your energy. So making sure you think about that. And I think we don't often consider the community that we're in before we go and buy a house. The second is customs, right? What lifestyle are you looking to live? How is the environment in which you're buying, is it going to allow you to live your best life, right? Is there a sidewalk for your kids to ride their bike? Do you like coffee shops? What's going to get you excited about spending time outside of work? Do you need to have restaurants down the street? All of these things need to be factored in, but a low stressed environment equals living long lives, right? So we want to make sure not only are we being good financially and being astute about our financials, but we also want to make sure that we're living a long, healthy, fulfilled life. And then the last is the commute, right? Because the commute can really either make or break you, right? I know that we're in this COVID environment and we think, well, we're going to be working from home, so the commute really doesn't matter. I mean, the reality is that we need to have an all-weather plan. So we need you to be able to commute to your kids' schools quickly. What if you got to pick up the kids midday? You want to make sure that your commute to church is still reasonable, so you can be engaged in the ministry. We want to make sure is there entertainment that's in a reasonable reasonable effort for us to be able to still have fun. These things need to really be considered. So that's the three: community, customs, and then commute. All right, so now let's think about some of the financial decisions. And this is really critical here. There are 5 key questions you need to ask yourself. The first question is the mortgage I am thinking of under 3 times my gross income? So in other words, if I make $100,000, that means that I can buy a house, that means I can afford a mortgage that is 3 times that, which it would be $300,000. Now, you hear I said up to, and you also heard that I said mortgage. So let me expand upon that. If there's a house that you enjoy and you can get a mortgage that's $200,000, why go to get the $300,000 mortgage? Maybe you can take that differential and repurpose that money in a different area in your life. Well, if I get the $300,000 mortgage, that doesn't mean that I can't get a $400,000 house or a $350,000 house, because if you got a down payment that can help you to get your mortgage below the 300,000, then it will allow you to still have the flexibility. Now, here's why we say, 300,000, or 3 times your mortgage, or 3 times your gross income. Well, if you every $100,000 in today's interest rate, every $100,000 will cost approximately about $450 a month in principal and interest payments. So when you have a mortgage, you're going to have, or mortgage payment, you're typically going to have your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And in some cases, you might also have PMI, okay, which is insurance that you pay if you don't put more than 20% down. Now, that's not always the case, but generally speaking, you're going to get PMI, which essentially is to protect the bank in the event that you don't cover your mortgage. Okay. So if I have $300,000 mortgage in today's interest rate environment, that might mean my monthly payment is going to be somewhere between $1,300 to $1,400 a month. And again, that's just principal and interest. Now, when I add in the taxes, insurance, and PMI, and potentially HOA fees, I'm now roughly around $2,000 a month. And the question you got to ask yourself, does the $2,000 a month allow me to do the other things that I want to do? The second question you got to ask yourself is, will this purchase take my fixed monthly expenses above 50% of my net income? Right? So you might say, well, we already figured out how to get to the mortgage, right? Using the rule of thumb of 3 times your gross income. But here's the reality. You have to check your current fixed expenses, because you might have other current fixed expenses like student loans. You might have your car payment. Okay. You might have other things that are non-variable that you have to take care of that are fixed, that need to be factored into that equation. So no more than 50% of your net income, and mind you, this is net, not gross. So net is after taxes. 50% of your net income should not be spent on your mortgage and other fixed expenses. So that means that we effectively have to reevaluate some expenses if you do want to get a higher mortgage payment. Do you need to get a different car? Do you need to first pay down some other debt? Okay. All these things need to be considered, because the bank is considering it. I can promise you that. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have luxury, right? Because I think sometimes that, it feels like, man, how the heck am I supposed to do that? Well, we can't live luxury in all areas. Maybe you spend more on your house and less on a car. Maybe you spend more on the car and less on the house. What do you value? That's the thing you have to ask yourself. But the one thing somebody told me, they said, Matt, you can be rich or you can act rich. I personally prefer to be rich. So what decisions are you making that are in alignment with that? Would you rather be rich or act rich? I can promise you the folks that act rich deep in their heart, and what they experience is not what you see on the surface. And social media has really created an environment that I think sends the wrong messages. So there's a rule, this 50-30-20 rule. 50% of your expenses should be on the fixed, 20% should be on your savings, and 30% is on variable. So that's just another rule of thumb that you can use to guide you through this decision process. Okay. The third rule, or the third question, excuse me, is this a place I can see myself living in 5 years from now? Why are we saying 5 years from now? Because when you buy a house, you're going to have some upfront expenses. Your mortgage, you got to pay closing costs on a mortgage. You got to pay moving expenses. Usually you got to furnish a place. You might even have to update your estate planning documents because now you got a new house. So these are expenses that usually it takes about 5 years to break even and recover that expense. So if you're not seeing yourself living in this place for more than 5 years, maybe you rent. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You have to assess where you are in your own journey. Now, there's a few caveats with this. One caveat is if you're in a high appreciation environment, right? If you're buying an area that's growing and the value of the house, it might increases. It might help you to recover on some of those what we call sunk costs, an expense that you were already going to have. It occurred and there's nothing you really can do about it. But if you get high appreciation and the value of your house increase, it can help to make up for some of that loss if you sold the property before the 5 years. But here's the problem with that. That's uncertain. That's not in your control. So we want to do things that are in our control, and we don't want to speculate, because speculation is where you get caught slipping. All right. Another caveat is growing families. They need to consider, is this a place where really I see, as the kids get older, living in? If it's not, maybe renting first for a little bit makes sense so that you can then save and preserve that money to actually buy the place that you really want, that the kids can grow up in a neighborhood where you would want them to live, maybe because of education or some of those other factors that need to be taken into consideration. But you really want to be looking through a lens, thinking about your future self, okay? Because your future self is the self in which when you make those decisions, your future self has to deal with the consequences, and that could be good or that can be bad. But we really want us to be in a position that's advantageous. We can't predict the future, but we can take our best guess. Question 4. Does this purchase mean I can't hit other goals in my life? So if I have a rent payment if I have a mortgage payment that's $2,000, does it still allow me to save for my other goals? Can I still travel? Can I still be able to give? Can I still tithe? Can I be able to go out on the weekends? You got to ask yourself, what do you value? And if the things you value are that important to you, you might sacrifice on a house that's maybe not the dream home, but you're going to be more fulfilled because you were able to accomplish some of the other things in your life that allows you to be well balanced. We don't want to be on the wheel that's not balanced, because you know what? It's going to fall off the track. The next question we got to ask ourselves, number 5, am I at peace with this purchase? Because, people can come and go. You can invite them to your house, but you know what? They got to leave and they go back home. But you know what? You got to stay there and you got to go to sleep. And you got to be able to sleep and be at peace of mind, knowing that you can take care of the mortgage, knowing that you're not overwhelmed. Maybe you don't have to work at that third job just to cover the mortgage payment. Right? If those are things you need to be thinking about because you live in this home, maybe it might not be worth it. Now, I always say there's some caveats, right? Here are some of the caveats we need to think about. The first caveat is, do I have a lot of assets but less income? I know I mentioned this earlier, But if you have more money in your savings and you could put more down, well, maybe you can get a bigger mortgage because maybe you can get a bigger house or a better house because you can put more money down, which means your monthly payment is going to be lower. Maybe you're at a phase in your life. Maybe you say, okay, because of the kids, we're going to make this sacrifice. We're going to get a house that maybe is a little bit of a stretch, but we're willing to sacrifice maybe retiring 5 years later. Maybe we're willing to, say, all right, we're here for right now, but later down the road, we're going to have to downsize. But I think it's so important to take into consideration some emotional factors. Those emotional factors are understanding that the reality is that most people don't actually downsize. It's a thought, a lot of people will have, but they get so emotionally connected to the house. The kids get emotionally connected to the house because the house they grew up in, and you don't want to get rid of it. But you got to manage expectations for yourself and your kids. Let them know the sacrifices you make. I don't think we have enough money conversations at the dinner table. And I promise you, your kids would only gain a further appreciation for those sacrifices that you're making, and they'll value money and be in an even better position than you are. And isn't that what we want? We want our families and our kids and our grandkids and our great grandkids to be in a better position than us. And that's what you call legacy. But at the end of the day, the ultimate decision is your goal, is up to you. But this is really a guideline. Those 5 key questions you ask yourself are guidelines. All right, let me read them again. The first one is the mortgage I'm thinking of under 3 times my gross income? Number 2, will this purchase take my fixed expenses above 50% of my net income? Number 3, is this a place I can stay in for more than 5 years? Number 4, does this purchase mean I can't hit my other goals in life? And number 5, am I at peace with this decision and can I sleep at night? And I promise you, if you ask yourself these questions, you'll live the fulfilled life and make the right decision for you and your family. All right, so let's move to part 2. And I promise you, we'll have some time for questions at the end. So let's move to part 2, which is the number 1 money rule. All right. Most people want to believe there is the secret to get rich quick. The right stock to buy, what's the right next move? Can I start this business real quick to make some quick money? And I promise you that doesn't exist. And here's one of my favorite quotes I heard someone tell me, and they said, I can't tell you how to get rich quickly. I can only tell you how to get poor quickly, and that's trying to get rich quickly. And so the option to have no pain and get rich quick doesn't exist. Now, do some of us get lucky? Absolutely. Do some of us win the lottery? Absolutely. But you got to ask yourself, how many of us actually win the lottery when we play the ticket? Right? Now, here's the thing. You're going to see friends, potentially family, people on social media who got a hit. They found a cool thing that they decided to do and it worked for them. But the key is does it happen consistently? And if they did it again and again and again, could they do that? And will the same result happen? I don't know. Now, I'm going to share with you, okay, what is the number 1 rule that has always worked and will continue to work in the future? All right, drum roll. The number 1 predictor of your future net worth is what percentage of your income you save. Boom! You're mind blown right now and maybe a little underwhelmed. But just good old fashion, living below your means will get you there. Does that mean that you don't invest your money? Absolutely not. But I don't care what percentage of rate of return you get. If you save zero, you know what you'll have? Zero, right? If you have $1 and you get a 50% rate of return, you know how much you got? $1.50, but that might not actually cut it. So the best way to achieve goals is to increase your savings percentage. And a recent study actually by the Federal Reserve found 40% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency. Think about that, right? A $400 emergency. Financial freedom is not living that tight. Okay. So I want to give you 3 steps to boosting your savings percentage. And step 1 is pick a percentage of your income you will save. If you're just starting rather, just any number is better than 0. 1%, 2%. The key is to start. And we have a few targets that we want to hit. And this might be a little bit overwhelming, but I'm going to give it to you because nobody's going to tell you the truth, right? Because nobody wants to do the hard work. Okay, but here's the targets. The first target is 10%. That's the first one to consider, right? It won't make you wealthy, but if you start early enough, it will allow you to retire at some point in your 60s, depending on the sequence of returns in the market, maybe a little bit in your 70s. But it might not be the ideal lifestyle that you ultimately want in retirement, but at least it will allow you to sustain a basic lifestyle. Number 2, 20% of your income. Save 20% of your income. For most people who start early enough, can accomplish most of their goals in life. Retire earlier, perhaps, send kids to college if they want, and financial worries are really at a minimum. Number 3, now this one's going to be a bit of a stretch, but saving 30% of your income. For most people, it's not possible, but it should be considered. And especially if you're young, like I'm just so blessed that I was able to be provided this education at such a young age that it gave me the mindset to say, you know what, I'm going to make some sacrifices early because I do like nice things. But if I make some sacrifices early, then I can position myself to not have to work as hard for those nice things in the future. And those things, and you can set yourself up for success. So if you are just graduating from college, or if you're in college right now and you're watching this, just think about, man, what if I could just go back home and live there for a little bit and live below my means and really save a lot? What if I could decide to take a lower rent? Even if it's $200 cheaper than the next option, that's still $200. That's $200, right? Times, 12 is $2,400. If you're making, $50,000 a year, right? That's a pretty nice starting point for savings, right? So I think that being able to really decide early is a game changer. Now, if you're older, you do have to consider there might be some lost time that you're making up for, right? You got to really ask yourself, did I do what I needed to do in my 20s? If not, maybe I need to pivot. Maybe I need to say, self-reflect and say, maybe I need to double down and make some decisions and sacrifices. That might mean you got to give up something, right? There's a give and take. Every decision we make is a trade-off. Now, for those who are able to get to that 30%, you're in a really, really, really good spot. I mean, a spot that honestly you can really write your ticket. You can retire earlier, send the kids to private school. You could some goals that are very elaborate in nature. But I think that I know this can seem a bit overwhelming, but if you just start with something, I promise you that's better than nothing. You want to slowly grow into these numbers. Again, maybe you start with 2%, maybe it's 5%. What's your number? And that's what you got to ask yourself. Okay. Set the standard. What's going to be the standard for you and your legacy? What's going to be the standard for your family? We got to break generational curses. And the only way we do that is by doing something different. We can't do everything that everybody's doing. You know, you might have to say, I'm gonna go to one less brunch. Instead of me getting coffee every morning, maybe I get coffee 3 out of the 5 days. There's some sacrificing, and I think it's this constant fast that we have to do to really posture ourselves to be successful here. Now, you might be asking, okay, well, how do I start? Where do I start? And it's that framework that I told you about, the 50-20-30 rule. 50% is on fixed expenses, your mortgage payments, student loans, car payments. Okay. 20% is on your savings, long-term, short-term, and midterm savings. And then 30% is on variable. Okay. And if you could reduce that fixed, it only gives you more flexibility to pivot, right? The higher the fixed, the less flexibility you have. And that could be career flexibility, right? If you ever had it in your mind of being an entrepreneur, I want to keep my fixed expenses really low. I'm okay with personally saying, for the longest, I lived in a $600 a month place in DC. I rented out a room, right? I rented out a room. I didn't care what nobody thought. All I knew was that by me making that sacrifice, it gave me the room for the blessings that God was going to provide me. But I couldn't, it's a give and take, right? So I paid $600 a month in rent. And then I went to $1,200 a month in rent. I could have been paying $3,000-$4,000 a month in rent. But I stayed below my means dramatically because I wanted that freedom to flex the variability up and down as needed, right? I wanted to be able to invest in others, but you only can do that when you got that margin in your budget. All right. Now, once we know that framework, right? And we say, okay, if my fixed expenses are high, maybe I need to realign where you live in, what kind of car you drive. I know where you live in isn't the easiest to change, but the car you drive is. Cars today, if you sold your car today, you probably might make some money, right? Usually cars are depreciating assets. Today, cars are very scarce. So if you don't need your car, you might decide, let me get rid of it now while it has some value. Something to ponder and consider. The second thing is no plastic access. What do I mean by that? Get rid of the credit cards. I don't need to be able to quickly touch my savings. I don't want access to that savings. That 10, 20, 30%, I don't want access. I don't want immediate access. I want to be able to put a wall. Yes, you need to have some checkings, right? You need to have something in your checking so that you're constantly operating. But I only want to put as much as I need there to operate for that month, right? And what I try to do is make sure that my variable expenses and my fixed expenses can all be taken care of in that checking account. But I use my credit card to pay the variables. And because once I know all my fixed expenses are going to come out, right? And then I know if my credit card balance is bigger than my checking account, that means I'm over budget, right? That's an easy framework for you to really test yourself and see, am I over budget or am I below budget? If you don't want to go to the details. Now, here's one thing I did do, and my wife as well. As we got married, we said, you know what? Let's start tracking our expenses to the dollar. And so every first Saturday of the month, we would come together and we would literally look at the bank itemizations and check every dollar. And it wasn't because we wanted the nickel and dime. It was because once you know what's coming in and out of your account, you have a different appreciation. You're consciously seeing even where your money's going. Where you want to know where somebody's value is, what they value in life, see where their money's going. Right? So if we have money coming in and out of our account and we don't know what that is, that's like basically allowing somebody to rob you, and you're robbing yourself from your future success. So I want you to monitor that. Number 3, make it automatic. Set up automatic transfers. I think the best thing you can do is set amount of money to get deposited into different accounts from your paycheck directly. So you have your job description for your different accounts. One account, you might say, this is my operating checking account for fixed expenses that are mandatory. You might have another amount go into a checking account that is for your variable expenses. And then you might have another amount that's going to your savings. And I think that will allow you to start to create a framework for you to have these things automated, because what it does is it removes the temptation. We start justifying things, like, oh, I'll just, next month I'll spend a little bit less and put some money over here and I'll make up for it. Forget about it. It doesn't work. Very rarely, okay, can someone do that and do it consistently. So I think the more you automate and you remove yourself from the temptations, it will set you up for success. Out of sight, out of mind. That's when I look at somebody's balance sheet, where most of their wealth is in their equity in their home, and it's in their retirement plan. Why? Because those two things happen like clockwork. Very rarely do you see somebody forget to pay their mortgage. That's why I believe people say that's your most important asset. But if you can treat that same posture and that same habit with other areas of your life and your financial plan, you'll be light years ahead. So I want you to make sure you put yourself in a position to be successful, because our brain is wired to be consumers, right? Most people can make a very impulsive decision to buy a car. We can make a very impulsive decision to do a lot of things that don't necessarily help us or really create, wealth for us. But for some reason, we struggle to make a quick decision when it comes to an automatic commitment to saving, right? So I think the more you flex this muscle, it's going to become a habit and you'll be disciplined about it. Now, you do have to be realistic, okay? We have to be realistic because it has to be sustainable. You don't want it to be a situation where now you heard my talk today and you're like, I'm going 30%. Matt told me if I go 30%, I'll never got to worry about money and I'll live the best life ever and I'll have whatever I want and I can retire early. But you got to really assess your situation and say, what's going to be meaningful, doable, and sustainable? Meaningful, doable, and sustainable. We need that to be the posture in which we make that commitment. Because if we don't make it, if it's not meaningful, then it's just not going to be, it's just you're cheating yourself. If it's not doable, you're not setting yourself up for success. And if it's not sustainable, you're only going to be disappointed in the future. So we need it to be meaningful, doable, and sustainable. And then we need to start thinking about number 4, which is pick a vehicle. Where are we going to put this money? And there's so I really think about this in 3 buckets. Okay, we need 3 buckets of money. And we need these buckets to have different characterization. That could mean they need to be able to accessible at different time horizons. They need to have a job description, like what is the money for? You got to know the vehicle in which it's going to be held in, and if there's any taxation, aspects or taxes that you need to be thinking about. All right, so let's start with, if you're writing this down, right? If you are, and I hope you are, right? If you're taking notes, you're going to have really like 3 different columns. Okay, column 1 is going to be our short term. right? And so if you see, you write short term at the top, and then right below that, we're going to call that 1 to 2 years. That's the time horizon of this money. And the reason why the time horizon is so important is because we don't want to invest money before a point in which we can minimize having to make bad decisions as it relates to money that's invested, because money that's invested should be thought about long term. Okay, you want to see somebody lose money in the stock market, they're thinking about it as a short term investment. You want to think about it as, okay, this is my 1 to 2 year money. Okay, so what is the 1 year, 2 money for? What's the job description? Maybe it's my emergency fund, which we want about 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. Okay, if you're single, you can get away with 6 months. If you're if you're single, you want to have 6 months, ideally over time, grow to that point. If you're a couple and y'all make the same money, then you can get away with 3 months, because if one of you lost your job, technically 6 months of expenses are still taken care of, right? Because if half the bills are taken care of from half of you, then that math works itself out. Then we want to say, all right, we want to have what I call a living wealthy account. And this is for, travel and for gifts. Travel and gifts are the two things we don't do every month, right? But when it happens, it got to come from somewhere, because sometimes we set ourselves up for failure, because we'll be saving money and then eventually it'll go out the door because we had to travel, we went on a trip, or we gave somebody some money, but we didn't create boundaries. We need to preset boundaries, and that's critical and important. But I like to call it the living wealthy, because I think abundantly, we got to live and have experiences, and we got to be able to give. And usually we want these dollars in things like money market accounts and savings accounts. Okay. The second sort of column is going to be our midterm money. This is money from 2 to 10 years. This could be a house down payment. This could be a wedding, wedding savings. This could be education for kids. And the first two, house down payment, wedding, or other major purchases, this would typically be in like a brokerage account, which is taxable. So every time you make money, you're going to pay taxes on it. And then you can have it in a 529 plan, which would be for education, right? It's a tax efficient way to use money for education savings. And then the last column is going to be long-term, 10, 20, 30-year money, legacy money. This is retirement money. These are usually going to be in things like 401ks, 403bs, TSPs, Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, right? Now, when you think about this, you really want to think about, okay, would I rather pay taxes on a seed, or would I rather pay taxes on a harvest, right? The seed, I really love this analogy, right? Because would you want to pay, if you're in your lowest tax earning years right now, maybe you want to do Roth, which Roth, you basically you put in after tax, it grows, and you never pay taxes on it ever again. And then when you take it out later, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket maybe, and you pay, and then you take it out tax free. And usually a rule of thumb, again, just a rule of thumb, you should talk to an advisor. But if you're making over $100,000, right, and you're older, you might want to go pre-tax. If you're making over $100,000 and you're younger, you still might want to go Roth, but you can't do Roth IRA directly. You might have to do Roth 401k or Roth TSP or Roth 403b. If you're below 100,000, period, I don't care who you are, I would go Roth. If whether you're younger or older, again, but go see an advisor to have that conversation, because they can give you a little bit more guidance. But the thing to think about is, we can't predict the future, right? But you got to take your best educated guess. And if you pay attention to the debt that we're in as a country, right, that's where taxes, they need to service the debt. We're $30 trillion and counting at this point, right? We got to make sure we think about the future, and we want to make sure we're guiding ourselves in a way that puts us in a really good spot. So, that 10% should land in that last bucket, that retirement bucket. Now, I have some caveats here. There are other vehicles. Okay, there are other vehicles depending on the level of complexity of your financial planning. And, have fun with this. Perfection is the enemy of progress, right? We want to make sure that we're making progress, and it's not about perfection. So just start somewhere. The quote that I heard was, I'm sure you might have heard it. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Don't procrastinate. Your future self will be happy. Now, moving into our last part here, part 3, 5 ideas to living a more fulfilling life. And, there's been some research, a number of research that has showed once you hit about $75,000 of income, additional income produces 0 additional happiness. That's something to think about, right? A lot of us are blessed making over that, and some of us are still on our way. But think about that. 75,000 is kind of that peak, right? Where we're like, all right, we're there, and we're now starting to create lifestyles that might be outside of the scope of what's going to give us real happiness. And Harvard, there was a study done at Harvard by these guys, Dunn, Gilbert, and Wilson, and they did a paper called "If Money Doesn't Make You Happy, You Probably are not spending it right." So it's something to really think about. Another read for you is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, Housel. It really helps you to understand your relationship with money and some things to think about. And I've been in over 5,000 meetings talking to clients about their money and their relationship with money. And I can tell you that here are some things to take away. 1, buy experiences instead of things. That new car we dreamed about, it goes from a new car that we dreamed about to just another means of transportation after a couple weeks. So, never really make a purchase just for the sake of buying a car or buying a house, right? You got to think about, is there an alternative experience that I would gain a better appreciation and I'd be more happy in the long term, that be durable and give us fulfilled life with more longevity. Experience, to me, is a permanent asset. Okay. They really impact who we become, right? And I think that's important to consider because, we learn from our trials. We learn from our pitfalls and the things that we never really think about that can really help us to be our better selves in the future. But money stress usually comes from these large purchases. Number 2, automating everything. Decide what you will have as a priority. And I promise you, by prioritizing first what's important, that's really the true freedom, right? Because when you prioritize things and you set your budget first, it allows you to spend the rest of your money guilt-free, right? We can spend our money guilt-free. We can have that variable bucket, right? We can allow ourselves to, really just let loose. But because you took care of your priorities, you've tithed, you've saved money for retirement, you save money for some of your other goals. Now we don't have any guilt. We usually have a guilt when we don't have a plan. So you get to budget because you now get to spend life living. So think about that. Number 3, be present. It's easier said than done, but money can hurt you. Money can hurt us because it really tricks us to believe we can buy this experience again, right? When you're present, you start to get a different level of gratefulness and this confidence in life, that life can actually bring happiness. Just imagine you going into a space where you see a sunset and you're just at peace and quiet and taking that in. It could create massive happiness, but it could cost $0. Think about that. Just being still, watching the sunset could really cost no money, but give us massive happiness. So savor those moments and be in the moment. It's not always about upgrading our lives. Sometimes it's just the simplicity of enjoying the moment as it is right now in the moment. Number 4, be generous. Life is not all about us. It's hard. It's hard to be stressed when you focus on serving others, right? It allows us to live in our purpose, right? It allows us to create this natural discipline to be generous to others. It really, in turn, helps us to create a discipline about ourselves, right? When we're focused on helping others, I call it, I don't know if this is a real word, but it dematerializes us in a sense, because you're not like, you don't got time to be worrying about, trying to think about what does the other person have and can I level up on them? And you're thinking about, okay, I'm serving, I'm focused. And then we move to, we move to really thinking about our values in alignment with our money. And then last but not least, practicing gratitude. Social media reminds us daily of what we are missing, but we need to be grateful for what we have. What do you have? Be grateful for that. Focus on what we have and be intentional on focusing on what we want and our goals. And you remember what I said, what we want, not what anybody else wants. What do you and your spouse want in life for you and your family and your legacy? That's where your intention needs to be. Because when you start trying to, compare to others, and there's nothing wrong with being competitive, because I'm a very competitive person, but at the end of the day, you got to be competitive with yourself. Be your best self, because your best self could be better than that next person. So just keep that in mind, and making sure that, because we're not comparing ourselves, that we continue to set expectations. All right. These expectations sometimes we put on ourselves only add more stress. But I promise you, if you make sure that you are focused on being happy and spending time and being present, and you really have that joy, these are the things that will put us in a position to make appropriate decisions that are aligned with our plan. So I really want us to make sure we're spending time on our relationship with money, being diligent around being grateful, and being intentional about the soft and technical, right? Because money can be emotional, but we also got to apply logic. Don't make irrational decisions, right? Only a present, pure mind can make a rational decision and make it sure that it's logical, but with a positive emotional outlook. So I'm excited to get into some questions, see, what's out there, and how I can be able to, share some more light this evening. So definitely looking forward to, seeing what questions you have. Please drop some questions, in the chat, so that we can be able to, give you an opportunity to take away some additional feedback.
Hey, man, awesome. Thank you, man. This has been great. I have so many questions personally that we'll go back on, because there's several nuggets you made and wonderful tips, of course. We're going to get to the questions in a second, man. But one thing I want to start off with right off the bat, I know you had the 50-20-30 rule.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, and for those that are listening, I just want to make sure 50%, you were saying for fixed, correct? The
Correct.
20 is for savings, correct?
Correct.
And then what's the 30 again?
The 30% is for the variable expenses.
Variable. Got it.
No.
Got it. So for those that are in our, obviously this is Christian space, I want to see and make sure that they understand where tithing comes into play. And just so that you can give a short piece on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Kevin. So tithing comes in the fixed. That's the 50%, because that is a predetermined number. That's the non-negotiable. right, it has to happen, right? So if I got 10%, right, going to tithing, right, then I might have another 30% that's going to housing. Now I'm at 40. And then my other 10% might be going towards my car or my student loan. And so when you preset those expectations and those priorities, it's easier to do it. But when you reverse engineer it versus looking at it as, okay, I know I got to pay these bills because the collector's coming from me. And then I got to go and, have fun. And then I got to go and do these things. Then these other savings and tithings become an afterthought at times. But we got to prioritize tithing, saving, then our mortgage, right? Because you can't pay the mortgage if you ain't got no savings and you end up in pickle. And you can't save if you ain't got God to give you the blessings to save, because those are his dollars.
Absolutely.
So we got to be in that order.
If you ask me, I can't afford not to tithe. And that's just, personal, of course, but awesome. Oh, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that everyone is clear where that falls in and how important, obviously, especially our church, tithing church, teaching tithing. We definitely wanted to make sure everyone understood where that fell. The other thing I wanted to, while we haven't, please, people, send in your questions. We will be looking at the chats. They will be sending them to me. So definitely look into the chat so that you can post everything in the chat that you might have as a question. But I wanted to ask you, because we didn't really touch it, I don't believe. But one of the things I wanted to ask, and I see there's a question, so let me get to it quickly. For our college community, and or those that just graduated from college, and or those that just have college debt, which is probably half, or if not 90% of the nation. Right. But anyway, here's my question. Help me for those individuals that know they're going to have 50 plus, north of $50,000 of debt coming out of college and or managing it right now. Help with some kind of tip, strategy, theory, thought process as it relates to managing that situation.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the first step is understanding your career path, right? Because depending on your career path will determine which direction you take with your student loans. Because when you have student loans, you can have federal loans, you can have private loans, okay? Your federal loans, there's so many different options in terms of repayment. But a lot of people don't realize that, there are other options for you to refinance your student loans. Just like how you can refinance a mortgage, you can refinance student loans. And especially in an interest rate environment that we're in today, I can refinance my student loans and get them down to maybe about 3%, right? And if I get my interest rate down, that means my monthly mortgage, my monthly payment can also go down. Now, the key though to understanding with this is making sure, the reason why I say about your career goals, because if you're working in a public sector or you're working at a nonprofit, and even most recently they opened it up to ministry, right? If you have student loans, you could potentially make 120 payments, 10 years of qualified payments, and your loans could be forgiven tax-free. Now, I think it's important to make sure that you are doing all the due diligence to get that done, to qualify those payments, right? And there's an organization that we've partnered with called GradFin. I believe you can go to gradfin.com, and they will help to assess your student loan situation. And they'll even also look at refinancing options, and they'll help to tell you, okay, should you refinance, should you not refinance, based on your career and your situation. Now, they won't give you any financial advice or any budgeting advice, but they will at least tell you specifically about your loans, what might make sense for you. And they'll even show you how much you'll save if you refinance your loans.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's very useful. I know our community has a lot of individuals that are facing college debt, just simply put. And so I know that might have been helpful for some. All right, first question we have, and I want to wait for it to be posted. Here we go. Do you have any recommendations for tools slash resources that will help us build a budget?
Yeah, a lot of banks today offer an opportunity for you to be able to track your spending. So I think, just understanding like what are you spending your money on now? I know that I promise you, if you just Google budget template, I promise you there'll probably be 1,000 of them that pop up. You just got to really go and find it. But I promise you, if you Google budget template, there are going to be a bunch of Excel documents that will pop up that you can pull from. The other thing is, uh, you know, uh, what is that? It's an app that just completely slipped my mind that tracks your spending. But there are a lot of apps out there as well that can help you to track your spending. So I wouldn't say there's like any one like go to. Mint is the other one that I was referring to. So Mint.com can also provide some opportunities and resources there.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Next question. Did the rules change for how much a person makes in participating in a Roth IRS?
Yeah, so every year they continue to reevaluate what the income limits are for somebody that can contribute to a Roth IRA. It's roughly for a single person, roughly around 130,000, and then for a family, it's roughly around 190 to 213,000. It's really a phase out, but that is something that you really want to take into consideration and speaking with a tax professional to help guide you there. But if you know that you're below 110,000, you'll for sure, if you're single, you'll for sure be able to do it. And if you're below 100 and let's say 90,000, 185,000 as a family, you'll for sure be able to do it. But then there's this phase out phase that you'll want to engage with the CPA to make sure your adjusted gross income doesn't fall over that. But one thing that's pretty cool though is most employers now offer the option for you to contribute to a Roth 403b or a Roth 401k, which there's no income limits there. So a lot of people don't know that there's no income limits to that. Anybody, you can make $1 million a year and contribute to a Roth 401k. You can make, $20,000 a year and contribute to a Roth 401k. So that is a very powerful tool that can create some tax diversification.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I pray that answered your question. I think it was Miss Pam. Next question. Do you have any YouTube channels and or podcasts you'd recommend?
Yeah, one I really like is Earn Your Leisure. They've done a really good job around just educating on different just education and period. Like they have a lot of different education on different areas of financial planning. I always do got to say that when you watch it, you got to make sure you take in consideration where are you at in your financial journey, and you're not trying to like do anything crazy because they have a variety of different sort of like entrepreneurs and people who have been successful financially. But you remember what I told you earlier, you can't necessarily get rich quick. So a lot of times you'll see people, they've had some success. It could have been a one trick pony, or it could have been a scenario where, they've been doing it for a real, real long time, but they may make it seem easier than what it is. Ain't nothing in this world that easy where you're gonna, have a great positive outcome consistently.
Cool. All right. We have another comment. Thank you for answering that, Matt.
Hmm.
Does that mortgage include all of the other bills that come with having a house?
Does that mortgage include? So no, so that mortgage payment only includes principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and PMI if it's applicable.
Mm,
The other expenses associated with the house will fall into the variable.
okay,
But
I got
one thing that I will say, one thing there though, is understanding that there are, of course, um, you got to think about the bigger house you have. What are those variable expenses that could come with it, right? Like, do you got to now pay for somebody to come do your lawn? Because that's an expense that needs to be factored in. Does somebody got to come clean the house because it's so big? Maybe that's something you got to consider. So you got to factor those, into your equation as well.
HOA. Um,
HOAs, yep,
it's a real thing.
yep.
So here we go. Awesome. Another question. How is a house an asset when you are still paying on it? The bank still owns it.
Great question. That's why, my first statement I made was that a house is not your most important asset, but it is your asset because eventually, right, you're building up equity in that property, right? So as you pay down your mortgage, even though the bank owns part of it, if you ever sold it, the money inside of it is your asset. So that is your equity that you can take away and then ultimately cash in and walk away with it. So the equity really, in my opinion, is really the asset, not the house per se. But in the from a perspective of like financials, they're going to look at it as an asset, but then they'll look at the liability as the mortgage. So you got the asset minus the liability of it gives you the net asset or net equity that is then yours to own.
Okay, awesome. All right, we have another question here. For the 20% savings rule, does that include short, mid, and long-term savings?
It does include mid, long term, short, mid, and long term savings. I would say that you got to ask yourself. I would never tell somebody that you're saving too much, right? But to the extent that it doesn't decrease your happiness,
Mhm.
right? So if your 20% allows you to save enough for your short, mid, and long, great. But you're going to go through this constant evolution, throughout your life. It will start off where maybe you got 10% going to long term, but then the other 10% is between your short and midterm. Or you might say, well, I don't have kids right now, so 10% is long term, 10% short term. You might say that, well, now that I took care of my short term goals, 10% is midterm, 10% is long term. But that 10% long term will always be there. And then once you accomplish a short and midterm, you might say 20% is long term to make up for some of the lost time. So it is this dynamic relationship between the three.
Okay. I got a question for you, and this is just coming from me, and
Absolutely.
what I believe that a lot of people might be considering. We have a lot of people thinking about buying homes in this time, and with interest rates being very low at one point in time, are we still believing that it's a good time to buy at this point, based on the current market interest rates that you have noticed as of recently?
Yeah, I think it is still a good time to buy. Honestly, I always tell people, it's never, ever, ever going to be, oh, this is the perfect time, right? Because there's always a new floor, right? Because if you wait, maybe this is the current last time you ever could buy at this rate. So I always tell people if it's a place you love and a place you can, find joy in, then you should buy it. And you can always change the rate later if it really ever went down that low. You can always refinance. But if it's something you want, it's likely something somebody else wants too. So there's always going to be a market for it, right? So you got to, make sure that you look at it from that lens and don't allow us have analysis paralysis and find ourselves end up spending more waiting than if you would have just took action.
Good, 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 good. We still have a few minutes left for those. Oh, here we go. Does the thrift savings plan now offer the Roth vehicles?
They have a Roth TSP option. So I love the Roth TSP, and I love Roth for people who work for the federal government because you already have a pension, right? And so when you have that pension, when you get to retirement, it pushes your income tax bracket up at a certain level. So what we don't want to do is push our income tax bracket up, and then you add Social Security on top of that. Now we're already set at a certain level, If now when I take money out of my TSP, if it's all pre-tax, I don't have as much flexibility from a tax perspective. So if I have Roth, then I can start to control my tax bracket in retirement by having that diversity.
Okay. All right. We have another one. Where I currently live, homes are selling around 10% over asking. What are the thoughts among CFPs about this crazy housing market?
So you're going to get mixed reviews, but kind of back to my earlier point with Kevin that, if there's a house that you want that bad, if you don't want it that bad, then don't buy it. But if it's a house that you don't, if that you want, and it's selling 10% over asking, that means somebody values it. The market is set based on what people value, right? So if it's up 10%, that means that might be the new floor in that area, right? And that's why inflation is what's happening, because we got to keep up with this. So that just means that not only do we need to grow our money in the bank, we got to grow our earnings potential, and that's through investing in ourselves. So, personally, I think that, sometimes we focus so much on being, adapting to the environment versus the environment adapting to us, right? So how do we show up, a different way to maybe increase our earnings potential? And then that helps us to solve for that 10% gap,
Good.
a
Got a
different
question.
perspective, but
Sure. Staying in the same vein of home buying or people who already have homes,
mm,
refinancing is a big topic now as well, considering, as we just mentioned, the housing increases. So that
mhm,
means the values, there's more equity, a lot of equity for people now than they
mhm,
had just 2 years ago or 2 months ago. So for those that are thinking about getting another mortgage rate because the mortgage companies are asking them, hey, do you want to refinance? Is now a good time? Do you want to do it now because the rates are low? All these
mhm.
enticing emails and or mailing, just physical mail that everyone is getting. What are your thoughts around the getting another rate for your
Mhm,
mortgage or for your housing?
mhm.
Because that's another way that you can just cut by way of rate. Or is there other thoughts on taking money out? Because that's another thing where people are leveraging that, considering the time and season, obviously, with the increase in housing. So I just want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, this is a great question, because it's a topic that a lot of people are trying to navigate. And so, yes, I think if you can get a much better rate, that you should refinance, um, even if it's on a shorter term, right? Because if you say, hey, I'm okay with keeping my monthly payment the same, so maybe you decide to refinance to a lower term just to make the efficiency of you paying it off faster, so you can pay off the debt faster, especially if you're in this phase of like kind of the glide path to retirement. Now, if I'm, someone who's young, I might refinance it to another 30-year, because now it helps me to reduce my monthly payment, thus helping me to increase that percentage that I can have to go towards savings. Also, I could look at it as an opportunity to gain some equity or capture some equity, right? So if I do a refi cash out, and let's say I take money out, when I take that money out, I need to be really intentional about what I do with it. Am I taking it out to go spend it, or am I taking it out to go and grow more wealth or pay off debt? That's something to consider, right? Because if I do a refi cash out and I blow it, then I just essentially erased all of the good savings that I did when I was paying down my mortgage, because that's what it was. You effectively were paying down your mortgage. And then even though your value of your house went up, it's still, you might be blending in part of that savings that you did as well through paying down your mortgage. So you got to capture both of those and make sure that you're, being financially prudent in that decision making process. But I would only do it for things that were going to create some level of certainty, you know.
Sure, sure. All right, we have another question. Is it true that, help me with the SS?
I got it. Is it true that Social Security will
Oh,
reduce the
okay.
monthly payment if you make a certain amount upon retirement? That is true.
Okay.
Um, so the thing with the Social Security is it's not your Social Security payment; it's the amount that goes towards like Medicare and Medicaid, right? And so, depending on your income level, right, there could be a function in which they cover for Medicare, Medicaid that you would have to pay extra as a result. Now, your Social Security payment itself could be at the highest level. Like from if you wait until age 70, for example, to collect Social Security, but your full retirement was at 67, you can get an 8% guaranteed rate of return on that monthly payment for the rest of your life if you delay. So if you don't need Social Security, if you don't, this is a blanket, advice, but if you don't need the money, you could essentially delay that Social Security and keep increasing your guaranteed paycheck for life, and then it allow you to spend your other assets down a lot faster in retirement. And now you just got to take into consideration some healthcare aspects of it. So if one doesn't have the best health, then maybe they decide to take Social Security sooner because they won't. They'll, not to be morbid, but you got to take into consideration life expectancy and some of those other equations.
Okay. I think okay. Last question. What's the max income you can make while getting Social Security before they reduce monthly payments?
So they won't reduce your monthly payment. Again, you can make $1 million a year, but your replacement ratio might go down, right? Because as you make more money, your replacement ratio goes down, but your dollar amount that you get it doesn't go down. So that's something to keep in consideration.
Sure. One more question. Last question. This is really the last question here. Is it true that if you sell a property and the profit is below a certain dollar amount, that you can avoid getting taxed on it? Good question.
Yeah, so that is true. If you, and this is again based on current tax code, if you sell your property and you lived in it 2 of the last 5 years,
Correct.
you can sell that property and get the equity up to $250,000 and pay no taxes. Now, if that's single, if you're married, you can get $500,000 and pay no taxes.
So if you've only lived in it 1 year, what happens?
You're gonna pay taxes on that sale.
Just full tax. Okay.
Yeah. If you sell it between 1 and 2 years, you're going to, if you lived in it for a year and a day, okay, you would pay long-term capital gains tax, which is a lower tax rate, generally speaking. Then if you sell it within a year, then you're going to pay short-term capital gains tax, which is a higher tax rate.
Good, good. Okay, well, sir, this has been fruitful. Let's be very clear about that. You've answered these questions marvelously in my mind, man. I thank you, really. And obviously, your presentation was deep, very, very beneficial, man. And so I thank you for the time that you spent preparing and then obviously sharing with us. This has been definitely beneficial. And I pray to all of our viewers, please give some likes, some shares, and all of that to support this brother, Matt Aaron. He definitely has his own practice. So please look up Lux Wealth. He's definitely, I would imagine, willing to talk to anybody about how they can see their financial future. And I pray that you would give him a call. He's not here for nothing else but impart wisdom to us. I'm doing this because I know this is good ground. And so I pray that you would support him as you have supported this broadcast. So thank you for joining us. And Matt, as always, you've done wonderful. And thank you for joining us. We're about to get out of here. Do you have any other closing words?
No, I'm just grateful for Metropolitan, and to bring me back for a second time, and I'm grateful for you, Kevin, for your ministry and being a light and guide to the ministry, and definitely look forward to continuing to build this bond and relationship with your community. And feel free to follow us at Lux Wealth Planning on social media, and I am Matt Aaron is my handle on social media, primarily Instagram, and we continue to share inspiration and light on there as well. So that's probably even the easier way to stay connected with us.
Awesome. Awesome. So definitely reach out to all of those that are interested. And thank you again, Matt, for this time, man. Have a wonderful night.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone. Thank you again for joining in. This has been amazing. I hope that you will refer back to this content as many times as you need. So obviously, there was an hour and a half as we see that we were on. So definitely log back in and check this if you need to reference it. If you have questions that possibly weren't, I guess, answered, definitely reach out to us via our email and we'll see if Matt can answer a question on the side, or definitely reach out to him individually and set up a meeting, set up a plan, because obviously your financial future is definitely something that is worth investing in and worth investigating. And so I pray that you would use these resources at your leisure. And again, thank you for joining and tuning in. I want to thank our Emerge Young Adult Ministry team. Thank you. I love you. God knows I do. Thank you, Erica, who ran this StreamYard. Thank you, Pastor Watson. Thank you, Dr. Wood. Thank you to all the Metropolitan members who have helped us and supported us in this endeavor. I am so thankful. As always, we are here, not here specifically, we have events every single week. Actually, we have a prayer call every week that we are always imparting wisdom into our community. Join us each and every week on Wednesdays during our prayer call. This particular month, we're having a series called Watch Your Mouth. There's obviously language that we use that can definitely harm or help us. And understanding how both of those are possible is important. So we'll be giving you spiritual nuggets, and we will be praying as a community. If there ever was a time to pray, it's now, not just for us, but as you know, things that are going on overseas, it's definitely a time to pray for those others as well. So I pray that you would join us if you have the opportunity. Eric, can we put the flyer or the graphic on the screen just so that, hey, there it is. And so definitely reach out and join us live on those prayer calls on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. And I pray that you will be blessed in the process, or join our email list. Email us at emerge at metropolitanbaptistchurch.org. And we can put you on our email listing, or you can follow us on social media. The handles have been streaming past this. Oh, here it is right here all night long. So definitely reach out to us again. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to close in a short prayer and we will be out. Lord, we thank you for this time. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your people. I pray right now for their faith, their finances, their friends, and their loved ones. God, we are so thankful for this opportunity, and we pray that everyone was blessed by what Mr. Matt Aaron imparted in us. Thank you again, God. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. God bless you, everyone. Thank you for joining.